All right, so I want to go over the next part of this so that you can see where we're going to be taking this. So this is my end model. Okay, so it's just like that. That's what it looks like at the end. I did put the fingers kind of out like that because at some point I may want to curl them in, and when I rig them, that might be the easiest way to do it, is having them here versus having all of them kind of facing down, which looked weird when I originally did it. Out seems like a good spot to do it. Okay, everything is kind of very uniform, very flat. I could definitely add some more detail to this, but the whole process of this is understanding just how to add detail to things and making it look like that, okay? Making it look complex. Just so you can see, like, the fingers here, this is a very, it's a cube that I just added some extrusions on. That's all it is. So I have some extrusions, and I've added some bevels in some, wherever it's hard, and then that gives me that shape. And the same thing here, I just extruded a bunch of spots and then beveled it, and that gives me that shape. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a complex model in order for it to look at least complex. And then I did one of these, if you didn't catch on, and then duplicate it and rotate it versus modeling each one. And then some of these things just like that, that's just like a ring that should be lowered down a little bit.
That's just a torus?
Yeah, that's just a torus. And I deleted the inside so you wouldn't see that.
As any professional would.
Right. Same thing here. This is just...
Ooh, that's a crazy shape there.
Yeah, it is a crazy shape. But it's basically, I started off with a cube, and I formed it to the arm, and then I just started adding some divisions in spots. Like, here's an extrude that I just kind of did, just like we did the Pokeball. Yep, that's all pretty much that was. And then I took this shape and did the same thing. So there's a couple spots there. And then I just did a bridge between the two. That's it. Just a bridge and had it round off, and that was that. Okay, so it looks more complex than obviously than it is. And then even on this, there's just a sphere with some extrusions, and then that's just a half a sphere with a little bit of thickness to it. All right. So once you get to this point where everything's kind of lined up, we need to start looking at what it's going to look like when we render it out. So in the past, what we've done is we've downloaded an HDR. So for this one, I want you to see how to build an HDR, okay? So there's two ways. One of them is we go outside with a camera. I want to do this when it gets warm enough out so you can see it, but it's not warm enough out yet. It's snowing earlier. We would take a bunch of pictures all around and above and whatever, and then we bring them into Photoshop, and then we would make an HDR, okay? The other way to do it is using a program called HDR Lights Studio. So on these computers, there's HDR Lights Studio. You can download a trial of HDR Lights Studio 2 and use that, or just kind of play around with it just to get used to it. But let me save this. What it allows me to do is create an HDR. So here is basically my lighting for that scene. And what's neat about this is that instead of worrying about, where am I going to place this light and this light to get the desired results, what I'm focusing on is what does the model look like, and how can I get the lights in those spots to get them to work. So if you look at a model that, product rendering, like this, okay, so from here I can see that there's a nice little reflection light happening right about here. Let me go to a different one because this one's pretty simple. There we go. So with this one I can see up top there's a light that's happening above it. And then on the left side, there's a big light panel. On the right side, there's a big light panel. And then there's even one, it looks like, around here and around there. So it looks like there's probably just these light panels going all the way around this thing, and that's what's creating this type of lighting setup, okay? So instead of me worrying about, here's my light, I'm going to stretch it out and kind of get it in position, and then do the same thing here. Inside of this software, I'm basically putting the lights on my object. So I'm going to go to a new project just so we can start from scratch. And this is what always starts up. You could definitely use that, but it's very difficult to start up with this and try to figure out how your lights are going to look on your model when you start off with a tea kettle because it's a completely different shape. So I'm going to bring in my model. So I'm going to go to Load 3D Scene. It's going to ask for an OBJ. So that's one of the formats that it asks for. Now I'm going to export from here all of my objects grouped together. So I just go to export selection. I'm going to say test geo arm, and I'm going to set this to number 2. And then I will bring in number 2. Okay. Now the way that the camera works inside this thing sucks. Okay, just it really does. I'm basically looking at the bottom of my hand. If I go to this, which is my free camera, I can, maybe I can rotate around. But when I do that, it doesn't work correctly, and now it's gone. Okay. So the easiest thing to do is realize where it's looking, and then just move your object, and then bring that back in. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So I know that it's looking at my stuff like this. That's how it came in, right? You can see that. So if I look at it from this view, and then I just rotate my model, like that, and then maybe on the side like this. Actually, I think I'm going to go like that. I think that'd be good. Okay, so that's how the arm is going to come out. So now I'm just going to re-export it as the same exact thing. And then just go back into here, load my 3D scene. And now it comes in at the correct positioning. I just have to go to the zoom and then just zoom out so I can see it. Okay, so by default we have one light set up in here, which is this default gradient background. So my HDR, if we look at this, is basically just this. An HDR, if you remember what they look like from when we were downloading them, like that, they are typically like this. There we go, it's a good one. So you can see how it's kind of like a distortion of that image, okay? Because it's a 360 image meant to be projected onto a sphere, and that's what it looks like when it's unwrapped and flattened out. So that's this down here. Now it doesn't look like that yet, but it will. So I'm going to go over here. These are all my different kinds of lights that I could add. So I'm going to start off with just a round light, and you'll see how it just kind of like drops right into the center of this, which drops it right into the center of this. If I go to my painting, I can choose whether I paint with the reflection, the illumination, or the rim light. For now, I'm just going to stick to the illumination. So I'm going to go here, and I'm just going to click. And when I clicked on this surface, what the software does is it figures out if I want this to be lit up right here, where on the HDR would that light exist, okay? And it automatically puts the light there. So even though I'm clicking here, it put that light all the way on the right side of that HDR. Then I can change the size of it. It's pretty intuitive once you start playing with the software, okay? There we go. So I'm going to give it just some basic lighting for now. That looks pretty good. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to go to my, let's do a rectangle light. I'm still working with illumination. And then I'm going to specify where I want this to be. So I'm going to have maybe a little bit of light coming in from this side. And I'm just going to change the height of it. And maybe I'll take the brightness up a little bit. It's too much. There we go. Okay, so that's looking pretty decent. I like the way that, that's coming across. Maybe a little bit of a rim light on this would look good too. Just kind of capture it and kind of pull it off the background. So if I change this, make a new light here like that. Change this to rim light. Then I can start to control where this is at. So you'll notice that as I'm painting this, now it's changing how the light's being placed. Before, it would place it and it was basically like moving far away. We couldn't see it. Now we're seeing it still in that background. Okay? So I'm going to zoom in here just so I can see this maybe a little bit closer. And I'm going to try to get the rim light, let's say, right there. Now, if I'm trying to focus on what does the rim light look like, I can turn off my other lights, which, again, is a nice feature. And then I can start pulling the brightness up. There we go. So I like that, maybe. And then... yeah, it's definitely hitting it on that side. I can turn the background off too and really see it. paintbrush. I can also rotate the light too. So this longitude and latitude will actually adjust. Oops, I'm clicking the wrong one. There we go. That's why I wasn't updating. This longitude and latitude will actually adjust where that's located. So you can see how I can just move that around. And that's going to be a little bit easier way for me to get this lined up with what I want to. Like that there. That looks good. And a little bit of height. Good. So I like that rim. I like the way that it's rimmed, lit there. There's a little bit of lighting here. And then this round light that I was screwing with accidentally, that's way too bright now. Alright, so let's say that this looks good. I'm happy with the way that looks. I think I need to fix... Oops. This is illumination. There we go. Okay, all this is changing is how it's affecting that light. So I'm going to rename these real quick. Rim light. There we go. Okay, so I'm on the rim light again, and I'm just going to pull that over. Oops. I accidentally switched to illumination. Rim light. There we go. Yep, that's good. Maybe a little bit more over. Did it again. I keep grabbing this round light. There we go. So now I can adjust that. Cool. Alright, and I probably blew that one out again. No, it's good. Okay. I'll put the background on. Good. Alright, so that's looking pretty good as far as the lighting goes. You can see the HDR being generated down here. The next thing that I want to do is maybe I want to add a little bit more contrast to this. Sometimes you add your lights and they light up everything kind of good, but I want to basically pull some of the light out of some areas. So I'm going to go into this thing, which is basically like dark light, right? So if I click on that, and then I go to my illumination, and I click, let's say, under here, and then I pull the brightness up, you'll actually see how it darkens that area. Let me take the width and height up also. So you'll see how basically I can add some darker areas of lighting into this now. Oops. I think maybe not that. And this is what's cool about it, is that basically we're just focusing on just the model, just like exactly what we're seeing here. I'm really not liking this dark light. Maybe that brightness is too much. It should be, because it's on that. We can use the different blend modes too, and sometimes that will help blend it in a bit more. Oops. Over. I guess I want add. Yeah, let's go here to the opacity. So that should have taken care of that, making it, nope, it's backwards. Alright, so put that one up, put this one there. Oh, that's the one I changed an accent. There we go. This one is going to be black, and this one is going to be white. Let's just make them both black. There we go. Now this one should be here, this one should be there. There we go. So now that should have softened that up. Yes. So now as I move that around, now it's a bit softer of a look. Now because I went so transparent here, we're kind of losing it a bit. It's updating, but it's not updating. Alright, let's delete that light and try that again. Delete. Black light. Click the model. Let's make this bigger. There we go. So now we can see that black hole right there. And then I'm going to set this to over. Multiply would work. Saturation, amplify. Yeah, multiply should work. I just need to change my ramp here. Yes. And then change the outside to white, inside to black, and then take this brightness down. Alright, that's not playing nice. I don't know why it's not doing that. It worked fine in the other one. Alright, well, I'll skip that for now. There's also a picture light, so you actually could bring in an image if you want a specific picture projected onto something. You could add another gradient background if you needed to, or a picture background, or a sky background. I don't play with all the stuff. I mainly stick to up here. There's also an Uber light. I don't think what that one did. I don't remember if there was anything special about that. No. I don't remember. And use the Uber light. It sounds neat. Delete. There we go. Okay. So once I have this and I'm happy with the way that the lighting is turning out, yep. Then I can go here and say render production HDR image. And then what I want to do is specify a size. I'm actually going to go in here real quick. I do want something down here. This is completely black, so I'm going to add blackness, and if I move this down here, it'll actually fill it. You can see, or it should be filling it. Yeah, it's acting very strange. Go to paint. Let me set this to maybe a reflection, and then move it down here. It just doesn't want to move beyond that point. All right. Well, I'll edit that later. So I go to render, I'm going to go to Maya orientation, Arnold, there we go, and then I pick a resolution. The highest resolution is 15,000 by 7,500. That's kind of overkill for what we're doing, right? So I would say at the most, 5,000 would be the very most. You can probably get by with 3,000 because of what we're doing with this. So I'm actually going to go with 3,000. 1000 resolution is fine. 32-bit linear, everything else is good. And then where are you going to put it? HDR from Light Studio. And then I hit render. And now basically it's going to take this, which is a low-res image, and bake it to a high-res image that we could then use inside of Maya. Cool. So now we're back here. So now I'm going to grab my environment, and on my color, I'm going to map that file, HDR. This is my one from Light Studio right there. Nope. There it is. Okay, so you can see there's my HDR from there. Now remember, I'm kind of oriented weird, so I probably want to rotate this back. And then when I go and render this, I should get something, at least a good starting point of where this is going to be at. as far as lighting goes, it looks like it's pretty close. This is still a Maya shader, so I still have to assign materials to this. So I'm going to start off with just assigning an AI standard surface. I'm going to call this silver metal. And you can start with a preset too, so don't neglect these things that they have these available. So I'm going to start off with, let's say, a brushed metal. Let me turn my Arnold renderer on, not the other one. There you go. I also want to eliminate the background because I don't want to see that as I'm rendering, so I'm just going to select that environment and turn this camera off. That way I can just focus on the arm because that's what I want, you know, that's my main thing. So there's my silver metal. That's just right out of the preset, which is pretty decent. I can adjust the coloring of this, obviously. Right, so if I wanted this to have some sort of tint to it, definitely not a full-blown color. We could do that. One thing I did forget to mention, in here you could also choose the color of your lights. So that rim light, my regular light, I can grab this and change the color. So if I wanted to do that as a blue, then I could cast that blue color. Alright, so that's good there. You want to have detail kind of show up, and the best way to do that is by adding some accent colors throughout this. So everything is not just like one solid color, because that wouldn't be realistic. You want to have other things happening inside here. So maybe like these wires that are right here, those will be one color. And so I'm going to add a new material to this. And I hate going back into this, so I'm going to go to my standard surface and right click and say add to favorites. And what that does is now under my favorites, here's that standard surface. So these will be wires. And then I can start off with, like, these are probably going to be plastic, right, or rubber. There's rubber. And then I can give these a color. So maybe because I kind of tinted it blue, maybe I'll go with kind of a bluey color on here. Right, that's not my Arnold render. There it is. All right, so now you have some nice contrast in there. It's not just like one surface super reflective. I'm getting that in there. I may want to look at my roughness, maybe pull the roughness up, depending on what it looks like, or pull it down. Right? I think it was fine where it was. These little packs here, I may want to give them some extra color. The hinges, the hardware. Let me pause this. Look at areas where you can just add just like splashes of different kinds of colors to this, because it'll really help break up the surface, and your detail will kind of pop a little bit more when you have that. So that's good. Maybe these bars too, I think we'll probably put inside that as well. I have some rings down here. And I'll select stuff in the fingers later. I'm just going to go to my standard surface. This is going to be a black metal. So I'm going to go with, I think still that one. Yeah, I'm still going to go with the brushed metal. But I'm just going to take this down to like a black. And then here in the fingers, just to get these to pop a little bit more, I'm going to take the knuckles here. And I'm going to go with a car paint metallic, and then this will be darker blue. Let's try that. Alright, so let's see what that's looking like. So you can see just by adding some colors in there, nothing crazy, it's starting to really bring out a lot of the detail. Okay, it still needs work, it still needs to be adjusted, but that's going to be that starting point of where that is. So I would still go through and start assigning materials to this thing. It's not a rainbow. You know, think of it like if this was a robot, they would have certain areas are still the same kind of metal. Other ones are this kind of metal. Other ones are this kind of metal. So I would say maybe at most have 5 different colors on this thing. At the most, don't try to go crazy with it. Okay. Somewhere on here, I will probably add a really bright color, so maybe like a bright yellow or orange or something like that, just to kind of accent it, just to kind of make it, again, a little bit more interesting, okay? Even something like this band right here, I can grab those faces. I think that might look kind of neat if I assign that standard surface. I did my car paint metallic, and then I went with something like way over here. Like that looks a lot better than it did, right? So I can definitely see that line a lot better. Okay, so again, I go through and start assigning materials to things. You typically wouldn't have metal bending into metal, like all the same stuff. These areas would be different. This would be, let's say, one metal. This would be a different metal, and then this could be the same metal again, right? Or that could be rubber. So just think about the kind of materials that you might put there. And again, your biggest resource is going to be just looking at different images of mechanical arms or robot arms. There you go. See, so in this case, this is very contrasty. Black, silver, and then that yellowy color, right? 3 colors, that's all they've used for this one. This one here too, you can see it's basically like a light gray, dark gray, and these pops of blue and red, right? Very, very subtle colors. White, black, a little bit of light gray it looks like in here. Okay, so play with those. If you wanted to, let's say, pose the hand a little bit or move things around, all of that is going to be based off of pivot points, okay? So I'm going to start off with one of these and just kind of show the process. I'm not going to do the whole thing. So the way that this hand moves is that these pieces here are all part of that same joint. So they would basically be rotating from here. Right now they don't do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this finger after everything is colored and textured. Then I'm going to shift click that one and then hit P to parent it. So now when I grab this and rotate it, you can see how now that finger is rotating. When I go up to the next one, I grab this, I shift click that, and then I shift click that same wheel, and then I hit P. The wheel, the parent, the thing I'm going to grab and rotate, that always gets selected last. So now I can grab that and rotate, and then you'll see how that moves that one. Now this didn't move with that one, so what I need to do is grab this, shift click that wheel also, and then parent it. So now as I rotate this, both pieces will move. And then I still get the ability, if I click this one, shift click that one, that I could then rotate both of them and actually get like the finger like bending, right? I'll do the same thing up here. So this piece, shift click, parent. This one will need to be parented to this wheel so it moves together. And so now if I click that one, shift click this one, shift click that one, and rotate, now I get that whole finger able to move, okay? So just mechanically think about what pieces are moving with what and parent them to one item that would be your main item that moves around. This guy here, that's just a clip, he just sits right basically on the palm of the hand, so I would just parent that to that. Okay, so now all of this stuff for that finger is done. Then I would go on to the next finger and the next finger and the next finger and do that again, okay? If I wanted, I'm going to turn my materials off for this by going to use default material so I can see it. And I'm going to just turn this on a layer and hide it so I can see my background. If the hand is all together, so I'm going to grab this and this. I can't just marquee stuff anymore because of how things are parented. If I start parenting things right now, it'll actually break all the stuff I just set up. So I have to now be a bit more careful of what I select. So this palm here has this in it, so I don't need to select that again. When I select this cylinder, it has the rest of the finger, so I don't need to grab all those pieces again, okay? And then these, I'm just going to marquee because they're not in the group. So grab those. And then I'll shift click this, and then I'll hit P to parent that. So now if I grab this, I can rotate my hand this way, I can rotate it that way. And then I'm just going to start grabbing other stuff. This is the forearm. These areas are actually really easy to do because all of this stuff doesn't move. It's just attached to the forearm. So all of that, yep. I shift click this and then parent it. And then I grab wherever that ball was down here, there it is. And shift click that and then P to parent it. Okay, so now when I grab that gear and I rotate it, you'll see how that whole arm moves with it now, and then still I can go to the finger that I did. Make sure I'm grabbing the right pieces there, and those will still rotate as well. Okay, and then obviously same thing for the shoulder, just grab everything and parent it to the shoulder, and then everything will move with that. Okay. So you could definitely do that if you wanted to pose your arm a little bit. It makes it a little bit more interesting than just being like that. For the rendering for this, you're going to do the same thing you did on the gears. You're going to render out your depth pass. You're going to render out your ambient occlusion. And you'll render out, this is where it's different, but similar to the Pokeball, you'll render out just a sweep of your arm. Okay? So if your arm is horizontal, you'll sweep this way. If it's vertical like mine, you'll sweep from top down or whichever direction you want to go, okay? So I think in mine, the most interesting part is probably the lower stuff. So I'm going to start at the top. So I'm going to click my render resolution gate. Oops, get this kind of framed up. Click my camera. I want to see a little bit of that. There we go. So I'm going to set a key. Do I want to adjust this? Yeah. Just adjusting my focal length, maybe I want to tweak that a bit. That's good. I'm going to leave it at that. So I'm going to set a key on here. So I'm just going to grab all these and hit S to set a key. I'll go up to, this will be 4 seconds, so I'll go up to 120. And I just go down to the bottom. Maybe zoom in a little bit if I'm too far away. And then set another key. And then obviously we want to watch it. Make sure that the animation looks good. Okay, nothing crazy. You don't have to go bananas with this one. If I rotate the camera, you'll see just how something simple as rotating the camera will cause this thing to kind of get off center. So right here it's perfectly centered. Now it's like off to the left, and now it's off to the right, and now it's like out of frame, and now it's back in frame, right? So just something simple like that is not working very good. You just need more keyframes. No, you just need to animate the camera better. The other thing we don't want to do is we don't want to have the camera picking up speed at the start and the end. If you put this in your demo reel and you want to use right from the start, right from the end, you want it to just go. You don't want it to be a gradual pickup and drop off. So I'm going to go to the graph editor for this. So Window, Animation Editor, Graph Editor. I'm going to hit F to see everything. I'm going to grab everything and then just hit that. That's all you have to do. Okay? And all that does is just make sure that the keyframes for this are linear so that the animation for that camera, it just goes straight. You'll see there's no speeding up or slowing down of the camera. And then just so you can see the process again with this, I'm going to add the Z channel. I'm going to add a custom channel. This will be my ambient occlusion. I'm going to click on mine. Remember, mine show up here. Yours doesn't. Different version, I guess. I'm going to go to the select AOV node, go to the attribute editor, and go to, where are we at? There it is, default shader. And then find that ambient occlusion. And then I'm also going to click on this again and make sure my default Arnold is set to merge my AOVs. And now when I look at the rendering for this, I'm not only looking for what does the color of it look like, but I'm also looking for the rest of it. I hid my background. You'll see I added no extra lights in the scene too, just FYI. Why aren't I seeing my background now? delete it. You're right there. You're not hidden. You're not scaled down. There it is. I must have hit P, I guess. There we go. Let's get back in our other camera. Cool. So I'm not only looking at the beauty pass, but I'm also looking at the ambient occlusion. So that looks pretty good. Yeah. If I need to adjust it, remember I'll go into my AOV node, go to the attribute editor, and where'd you go? Right here and right there. And then I can start to adjust, let's say, the fall off, and that will crisp it up. Usually that's what the problem is. It's too gray. It's like basically just like a big gray mess. So you just adjust the fall off until you get something that's a bit more contrasty. If I go, I can't go there. If I go here, yeah, this is too black. It'll just eliminate that stuff when we get inside Nuke. And if I go there, that's actually a pretty good amount. If I pull this down like this, oops, that's fine. If I pull it up, yeah, not a huge difference in this case. Yeah, near clipping is going the other way. Yeah, so it's actually working out. This one worked out pretty good. I'll probably take the samples up to maybe 6, so it's really nice and smooth. And then I also want to look at my Z depth and use this as my guide of what's working and what's not. I'm not seeing anything. Sometimes you will not see anything inside of this just because of how it's set up. So if that's the case, I'm going to go into Nuke and actually look at it. And while that's going, I'll wait. Close that, close that. Alright, so I'm going to hit R to read this in. I'm going to go find my image. 20, model HDR, images. It should be in temp, I believe. And there's my arm right there. So it should be an EXR. Because they're all joined into one, I shouldn't have any folders for this. And now I can hit 1 to preview it. And then I can go through, is that the right one? I don't think that is the right one. Let's find out. So let's save multi-layer EXR arm. Yeah, I know what the other one was. Okay, so there's my arm render. And then I can go up here to AO and see the ambient occlusion again. I can go to depth and play with this. And there's the depth coming through. Okay, so the depth is working. So that should be good. Cool. So then I'll go through and set up my render settings. I'll give this a name, Sarcona_MechArm. Name.number.extension. This is the same settings as the last one. Start frame, end frame, which camera is rendering. That's all good there. I recommend also taking your settings up. Don't go crazy on these because the bigger you go, the longer it's going to take. Because of the kind of surface I have, I'm probably going to go with 5, 4, 4, and 2. And 2, 2. Cool. Close that. And then I go to my rendering. I go to render sequence. And turn that off and make sure I choose my perspective view and just say go, and it'll go through and render it out. Go into Nuke. Same thing we did on the Pokeball. Do your ambient occlusion, do your Z depth if you had those on it. And then take it into After Effects, make it into a movie. Okay, that's it. Questions on that one? No? All right.